Hey guys, Mel the Train Tutor here with another Back to Basics video for you, and in this Back to Basics video we're going to be looking at balsa wood. Now if you've not come across my Back to Basics videos before, they're part of the Back to Basics playlist, and the idea is that in each video we look at a particular common modelling material or a particular common technique, and we look at, giving you a grounding in the knowledge and the skills to use that material or that technique. And the idea is these are things that are common across all terrain projects. Rather than showing you how to build a specific thing, it's showing you how to use the material so you can build whatever you want. So I'll throw a link up to the Back to Basics videos, the playlist, and you can check that out. But let's get cracked on, eh? Right, balsa wood. Lovely stuff, absolutely lovely stuff, It's been a staple of the hobby community for donkey's years. It's used a lot in model building, not just Wargames terrain. Wargames terrain is sort of the side of balsa wood. Balsa wood is used lots in bridge modelling. A lot of model airplanes are built out of balsa wood. Now, balsa wood is a flowering plant. It is a very rapidly growing flowering plant, and it's from South America. Now, with like all rapidly growing plants, it has it's strong, but it has a low density, i.e. it's very light. So other examples, things like cork bark, bamboo as well, that grows quite rapidly and therefore doesn't have much density, which is why it's softer. And balsa wood is just the same. Typically in wargaming, we use balsa wood to represent wood. One, because it's easy to work with, and two, because it is wood and it does have a grain and you can work with it quite easily. It works really well as wood. Okay, now I know that sounds ridiculous. I know it does, guys, but that's what it's used for. And typically, I've used it for the White House build. You can see how I've used it on this build, and yes, we'll be finishing this soon. As part of the design in depth. Now these aren't wood, these will be concrete, but it works really well. One of the reasons it works really well in this sort of modelling is because it's standardised. The sizes are standardised, so you can get really good architectural designs with it, with very little effort. So let me put that over there. So let's have a look at balsa wood. Okay, now I've got an absolute ton of it, all different bits and bobs and that sort of stuff. Typically it comes either in sort of square rods, if you know what I mean. Various different sizes. Or you get like the railway sleeper, the rectangular pieces, once again in various different sizes. Okay, now on top of those you also get it in sheet form. Okay, so thin sheets, and these are used for making model planes and that sort of stuff, bending round and fixing in, etc. Typically we use this sort of stuff for doors, for wooden walls, etc., that sort of stuff. Now there's some common tools that you need to work with balsa wood. Sharps, straight off. Okay, a good sharp blade. You cannot work with balsa wood with a dull blade. You'll have horrendous problems. Okay, the reason for that is that because it's so soft, as you cut into it, if your blade isn't sharp enough, what you'll find is that the balsa wood will give way under the pressure of the dull blade before it cuts through, and it will dent the edges. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean in just a second, but I just quickly want to go through a few tools. So obviously, very sharp blade. Another one is what you call it, a diamond saw, a hobby saw. And the reason for this is it gets around that compression issue. With a diamond saw you can actually cut through the balsa wood. Okay, and therefore you're not pressing directly down and you're not compressing it. And so if you need to do things which have very sharp edges, need to fit perfectly, then a diamond saw is the way to go. Typically, just to give you a little cheat, with things like this, when I've done these pieces, I've perhaps pushed down, and because I've compressed it, I've turned it upside down, so the bottom is the outward facing and the compressed bit is hidden with the back towards the foam board. So you don't need a diamond saw. There are ways round it. There's little tricks and stuff like that, but you need to be aware that if you want really good results and you don't want to get away from that compression issue, then that's the way to go. I need to get that done. Right, let's put that over there. Okay. So we've talked about the blades and how to cut it. A couple of important tools is obviously, yeah, metal, ruler, metal T-square, yeah, and also a hobby mitre block. Now this is not essential, okay, but if you're planning on doing 45-degree cuts and stuff like that, then it is a real bonus. The other thing is you need to be aware of, you don't need to actually cut all the way through on the hobby mitre. All you need to use it for is to score your line, and then you can take it off and cut it, you know, easily, you know, without the hobby mitre. Yeah, a couple of other things that we're going to be using. Yeah, sandpaper. Whenever you're sanding balsa wood, yeah, make sure you use something like 120 grit. Yeah, something really fine. Real coarse sandpaper, you know, something like an 80 grit, will literally shred balsa wood. Okay, a couple of other things. Y brush. Yeah, and we can use this for distressing the balsa wood and giving it sort of the look of real wood. Yeah, pins. Okay, typically I pin balsa wood in place, yeah, because you can pin straight through it quite easily. It doesn't split the wood. Typically I'm working with foam board and polystyrene, so you can pin into those relatively easily. Yeah, when it comes to taking them out, you know, they just pop out, and you know the hole is tiny, so it's not an issue. Yeah, glue of choice is PVA. Yeah, there are other glues you can use. There's nothing wrong with them. I wouldn't use super glue with balsa wood, to be perfectly honest. It's a bit OTT. Tacky glue will work. Yeah, I like PVA because it's cheap, you know, it does what I want it to do, but it will work well with balsa wood. PVA is also important with balsa wood for sealing it with watered down PVA. Because it's so soft, balsa wood will soak up, yeah, paint. So it will soak and soak and soak paint up. So it's really important you give, before you paint it, yeah, that you actually seal this stuff. And for that, I tend to use a 1:5 ratio of water to PVA. Yeah, and it works absolutely fine. The water soak gets drawn into the balsa wood, leaving the outside with a coating of polyvinyl acetate, which, you know, the PVA, but basically it plasticizes it. So that's all the tools we should be looking at. Yeah, and water. We'll talk about water in a little while. Let's talk about actually cutting balsa wood and show you what I mean. Right, what we're going to do is try and zoom in a bit for this. So I'll set the camera up and we'll go for that. Now, very quickly, before we jump into all the cutting techniques and stuff like that, and there's one other tool I wanted to show you. Now, I mentioned that the balsa wood comes in these various shapes. It also comes in large blocks and large sheets. And the reason it comes in that form is because you have this sort of little tool. Now, this is called a balsa splitter. And basically, all it is a blade on an adjustable block next to, that sits on top of another block. And you can adjust, you know, the gap between the blade and the block, yeah, by turning this screw. Okay, and what we use this for is for large sheets and the large blocks. You can literally cut out your own rods and strips. Now, this is common strip that I used all over the White House for the design in depth stuff. Yeah, and a lot of it came via the balsa stripper. So it's set to a certain watch cut size. All you do is you line it up on your wood, yeah, and then just very carefully bring it down. Yeah, there you have it. And then if I pick it up, bring it up, you can see that very fine line. There you go. Now, by doing that, I can use sheets and literally knock out exact widths of this stuff time and time again, yeah, for relatively no cost whatsoever. Well, for a lot cheaper than buying the strips, yeah. So if you are going to get into a lot of balsa wood work and that sort of stuff, seriously consider investing in a balsa stripper. They're about £4 or £5. I mean, they're quite simple, and to be truthful, you could probably build a standardized one if you wanted out of Lego quite easily. Yeah, I like this because it's adjustable, which is why I picked that up. But that's the other tool, and you know, I wanted to show you that. So let's get on with cutting. Right guys, I've got a little bit of balsa wood here, and first off, when it comes to cutting, now, as I said, you want to avoid pressing straight down. I mean, if you do, if the balsa wood's firm enough and your blade is sharp enough, come on, yeah, you can sometimes get a good cut, okay, without any compression. Okay, but this is a very sharp blade. If I was to use the other side of the blade as an example of a dull blade, I'm using my right hand with the blade here so you can see it. I'm awful with my right hand, so please, yeah, you'll see that what you get, focus, is sort of a compression. Okay, now that's exaggerated because we're using the back of the blade, but you can see easily how the wood would fail before the blade cuts through it. So it's really important you have a sharp blade for this sort of stuff. Okay, I also recommend sort of extending the blade, if you can, a little bit further. Yeah, and do it like a sawing motion. Be very careful at the end. Come on, don't. Because there's a tendency to rip the last bit, and that will give you a lovely clean cut. Okay, so just remember when you're cutting this stuff, don't go straight down unless you know it's particularly soft and you have a really sharp blade. Ideally backwards and forwards and a couple of few strokes at the end to cut through those last bits, because they do tend to split. Okay, same with the diamond saw. The diamond saw is relatively easy. Yeah, nice, easy, quick. The end is a lot rougher with the diamond saw, because obviously, you know, it's using teeth to cut it rather than, you know, a sharp blade, but it's still perfectly fine. So when it comes to sanding it, like I say, you want to be looking at something like a 60 grit. Yeah, and that will give you a smooth sand. So, if I bring that up to the camera, you can see how that's taking the edges off. So this is a really quick way of sort of taking the squareness away from it for when you're doing wooden beams and stuff like that. Another thing when you're doing wooden beams is people tend to like to do chips out of it. Yeah? Now when you do chips, they're fine if you're doing little chips, but what you've got to be careful of is that lifting, because if you go too deep, yeah, and you lift, what you'll do is you'll snap it and get that sort of really irregular looking, sort of cut. Okay, so if you're doing deep ones, what you need to do is half and half. So half from one side, then half from the other, and that will give you a much more organic looking sort of cut, yeah, from the split. So we've talked about the basics of cutting it. We've covered the diamond drill, yeah, we've covered sanding it, we've covered the balsa splitter. Let's talk about engraving it. Okay. Oh, here we go. This is perfect. I've got an off cut. There you are. Bit of a door. Right. So, we've got a door there. Yeah, I know it's not. Yeah, it's a rough cut, guys. Yeah, can I zoom in this anymore? So here's our wonky door. Okay, and when it comes to engraving it, there's various tools you can use. You can use everything from pencils, sculpting tools, cocktail sticks. My personal favourite is the ballpoint pen. Couple of reasons. One, I find it comfortable and easy to work with. Two, because it's got a roller ball on the end, I tend to find it flows across it, you know, across the the balsa wood really easy. Okay, and also because it's a pen, it sort of marks where I've already engraved. Yeah, so if I was to come along here, now when you engrave in balsa wood, it will always go better if you go with the with the grain. Yeah, and I tend to just let it follow the grain rather than use a ruler. Yeah, and I'll do it one way, and then I'll spin it round, and I'll do it the other. Yeah. And what I'm doing here is, if I do it just one way, because of the way I hold my hand, yeah, what I end up with getting is, if I bring this up nice and close, yeah, what you get is, because I've come in at an angle at this side, on this one, because I've only done it on one side, yeah, one side is smooth and you've got a hard ridge. Yeah, on this side, because I've done it on both sides, yeah, you've got a smooth ridge going down and then a smooth ridge coming up, and it's far more natural. I mean, you can get around this situation by simply going directly straight. Yeah, and because the ink hasn't come out on that one, you can probably see the engraving better. Yeah, see it? Yeah, you can see that there. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Like I say, if you are, you know, left or right-handed and you're going in one way, just make sure you come the other way just to smooth that out, thicken that line up. Okay, or like I say, just come directly down so you don't have that angling. Okay, guys? Yeah. Now, the one thing to sort of be aware of as you sort of put in these lines is you will reduce the integrity and it will start to bend. So if I very quickly there you go. Right, just very quickly, just to show you, really rough. But as you can see, I put those lines in, and now, yeah, it's sort of lost its integrity. So just be aware of that. If you're doing doors and stuff like that, just be aware of that for when you're actually going to be gluing them in place. The last thing you need to do is, you know, do your doors and end up splitting something. Okay, now, when it comes to bending, yeah, actually just before we talk about bending, let me very quickly, yeah, wire brush. Yeah, this is used for distressing, and what you got to do is give it a good push. Okay, so go in, obviously in the direction of the grain. And then if I bring it up, come on, focus, where are you? Right. Yeah, do you see that? See the wood grain in there now? Yeah, and it literally is simple as that, you know. You've seen me put the planks in, you've seen me just distress the wood a bit. Yeah, a couple of little slips across, a couple of little bars across, and a couple of little, tiny little bits of, what could you use? Blobber glue, for what you call it, for nails, nail heads, or even, you know, top of pins. Push a pin through, you know, clip it the other side, that'll give you a good nail head. And it's quite easy to make quite a realistic door, yeah, using just a wire brush, engraving, a bit of balsa wood. But what I wanted to show you now, yeah, is we're talking about this bending malarkey, yeah, the structural integrity. If you want to bend balsa wood, you can. Okay, so let me get a bit. Let's get that bit, okay? And what I need to do is very quickly cut a bit off. Yeah. Okay, so strip of balsa wood. Let's come out a bit because this should be okay. Yeah, there you go. Strip of balsa wood. Yeah. Water. Now you can use thinners. You can use methylated spirit. You can use not methylated spirits. You can use alcohol-based thinners and stuff like that to do this a bit quicker. Yeah. I'm using water because, you know, it's just here. Thinner's giving me a bit of a headache, to be perfectly honest. But what I'm going to do is basically soak this. Now, if I look at it like that, yeah, that's about as much as it can go. It's already soaking, to be truthful, but it will snap. Balsa wood will. I really should cut you another bit just to show you what I mean. Right, because that's already started soaking. So very quickly. Yeah, now this is completely dry. Yeah, if we bend it, yeah, it snaps. If we soak it with water, and I'm going to soak the middle here just to show you what I mean. Or like I say, soak it with spirits or something like that, yeah? See how that bends? It doesn't snap. And you can feel it, you can feel where the thick bits are, where it hasn't soaked in yet. There you go. And it is even possible to soak this so much that you can literally end up rolling it up without it snapping. See, I haven't even soaked these end bits and they're starting to bend a bit now as the water's been drawn across the balsa wood. Yeah, Couldn't do that with it when it's dry. Now when this dries, if it's fixed in place, it will set and it will hold that bend. Yeah, as an example, here's one I bent earlier. Yeah. And so that gives you the ability to sort of put these balsa wood sheets around things. So as a great example, think of a water tower in a Wild West scene. Yeah, they're typically planks in a circular arrangement. You could very easily get some of this, cut it to the right height, soak it, bend it round something, fix it in place, yeah, and then when it's dried, come in and engrave it, and then use your wire brush to give that wood that actual grain texture. Really simply, really simply. Yeah, so that's covered the water. I think we pretty much covered it. Let me see. We've covered cutting it, we've covered sanding it, we've covered engraving it, we've covered distressing it and getting the grain in with a brush. We've covered bending it, I've talked about gluing it with PVA. I don't need to show you how to glue balsa wood down, yeah. Don't go crazy with it. Same with when it comes to the ceiling. Like I say, if I tend to go for a 5-to-1 ratio. Yeah, 5 parts water, 1 part PVA. And you know, I don't spray it on, I brush it on. Okay? I don't recommend you, if you're going for this wood effect, keep filler away from it, because what you'll find is that this stuff will suck in the moisture from filler, and it will literally, you'll lose all your details. So keep away from it with filler. If you do get any filler on it, okay, a wet brush, you know, work it out before it sets, because it will ruin the look of it, to be perfectly honest. So I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, we have covered cutting it, sanding it, engraving it, we covered the balsa stripper, bending it with water, yeah, I think that's pretty much. So those are the basic sort of techniques for, you know, working with balsa wood. As you can see, it's a really good material to work with. It's relatively cheap. If you're doing a lot, then consider buying, you know, the bulk packs and get yourself something like a balsa stripper. If not, you know, just buy yourself a couple of rods and go from there. It's great for doing your design in depth on on concrete buildings. It's great for Tudor buildings, and especially brilliant for you know, for Wild West buildings. Now, before anyone chips in and sort of says, yeah, I use coffee stirrers, tongue depressors, lollipop sticks, yeah, they're great too, no problem at all. Okay, it's just they only come in certain sizes and certain lengths, and balsa wood allows you to, you know, take it to far different sizes. You know, you're not going to get a piece like that, you know, with a lollipop stick. So there you have it, guys. This has been a back to basics guide to using balsa wood, yeah, in Wargames terrain and hobbying in general. Really hope you found it interesting, guys. I hope it's given you a good grounding. As always, yeah, if you've got any questions, any advice, any tips you want to add into the mix, all that sort of stuff, throw them in the comments, guys. Like it if you like it, share it if you know someone who, you know, finds this sort of stuff. And if you really do like my videos, yeah, consider checking out Patreon, and, you know, consider throwing me $1 a month, you know, to keep me going and that sort of stuff and help me along. You don't have to, there's no pressure, you know. You get nothing but my eternal thanks for doing it, to be perfect. There's no exclusive content, anything like that. But, you know, if you do, brilliant. If you don't, I'm going to be carrying on anyway, because, you know, I love it, you love it, and we're all having a great time. Anyway, I've got more terrain. I've got to do an entire 2 foot by 2 foot of herbs basin. It's going to smell lovely. Anyway, guys, I'll see you in the next video. All the best, yeah? Ta-ra.